Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters,
Greetings, Cretans. It's
Hey
good to be
everyone.
back.
and welcome back, Porno Steve.
Yeah.
Good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a
You've,
while.
You've been
Strangely enough, I haven't missed that mustache. It's no, I did really.
you're just jealous you can't grow such a fine porno stash.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Somebody's got
That's what killed your porn career, John.
That may have been it. I'll
That was part of it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Certain other small factors perhaps involved, but we won't go into that.
It was
Right,
most of the stash, let's be real.
It's cold on those sets, is what I've heard.
Yeah.
Cold.
Colder than you'd think. Yeah.
You'd think they keep it warm, but perhaps not.
It's not too early for a beer, right?
Never.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I got my brew in the handy dandy stainless steel cup.
It says Steve on it or something.
SLW Brewing Company, which
Oh.
is
We better put that Steve.
it's the airport moniker for a brewery in Mexico.
What airport is SLW? One makes like coleslaw or something.
San Luis something or other. I've forgotten. I'll have to look it up.
Airport coleslaw.
Airport coleslaw. That's some of the finest coleslaw you're going to get is at your airports. You'd think it'd be at a deli, but it is the airport deli where the slaw is pretty excellent.
I'm convinced that's what gave me my worst case of La Trista ever, where I had to take antibiotics that they warned you not to go out into sunlight with. Apparently you'd catch fire.
Is she a vampire?
Yeah, something. The warning label on the antibiotics was just like, do not go out in sun.
Yes. Oh, there you go. So that's what happened.
Yeah.
And this was from Airport Coleslaw?
I believe so. Yes, either that or the raw guava that a friend of mine had me try the last morning we were there. But seeing as how it didn't hit me till like the next day, I think it's more likely the airport coleslaw.
Right.
Yeah. You know.
You know which airport has the finest airport coleslaw? I mean, based on my research.
I don't. In fact, I'm interested to learn.
I would say it is good old Denver International.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you got to go to the far end of the I forget which terminal it is, but I think it's B. It's at the complete opposite end. There's some fine coleslaw down there. Check it out.
Okay. I usually go to the Singapore street food on the second floor there above McDonald's. But
oh, right. Yes. In the Changi airport.
Yeah.
Yes. That's quite the airport too. But for slaw, just can't beat the good old Denver International.
I'll remember that.
All right. Who's also a great fan of coleslaw?
Our good friend John Blickman, perhaps?
Absolutely. He is quite the coleslaw connoisseur. Makes it himself at home. Fills his bathtub with it and bathes in it.
Even a cabbage farmer, most likely. Yeah.
Right. If Blickman was to farm anything, what would it be?
I think it would be cabbage.
Cabbages, absolutely.
Yeah.
He likes spherical shaped things. He likes balls of vegetable. He's Brussels sprouts, artichokes a little bit. They're a little pointy, but cabbages, that's him. Pumpkins. He's the gourd family is okay, but generally just the roundish ones, not the oblong ones.
Right.
He has to do with shape, huh?
Yes. And he is still making some excellent brewing equipment too, we should probably mention.
Yes, he's been known to do, 5-barrel batches of coleslaw.
Yes, yes. He has professional slaw making equipment if you're in need of slaw
Oh, it's
making.
expanded to the coleslaw industry, huh? Even
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
it's Indiana,
Ah.
You got to go for what the locals want.
Right.
Right. You got to get your stuff out there. Make what the consumers are crazy for. And they're crazy for the fine Blickman Engineering brewing gear. You can check them out at blickmanengineering.com. Send an email to feedback@blickmanengineering.com, and that'll reach our good friend John Blickman, who was paid for this show for way too long. I think it's clear
It's a good friend.
by the first 10 minutes of this show.
Right.
He's a good friend. And he enjoys the slaw, and the Teresa stories and spherical vegetables. So check him out, support him if you can. He's a good guy. Today, our good friend Taylor Roach, is aka Porno Steve, has graciously come back to say hi and see how we're doing and kind of join in. It's been a long time. What you been up to? Last I heard, you were off touring with your band, and
Yeah, I went on like a 2-year kind of touring run. Kind of ended up culminating in a month-long Europe tour.
Okay.
Which is really cool, man.
Which
All over.
prison was this? Or
That was in Germany.
Oh.
That was in Dusseldorf.
good city? Yeah.
Great city.
Did you enjoy the beer in Europe there?
Oh yeah, dude, second to none, man.
Did you go down the Altstadt in Dusseldorf and
Yeah, Dusseldorf for all the alt beer they have there, right?
yeah,
Cologne for the Kolsch.
yeah.
Yeah, went to, man, I went everywhere, man. It's crazy. Frankfurt, Berlin, Hamburg. What's that little German town? Super east, bunch of castles. It's like super medieval city.
Nuremberg? No?
Nuremberg was a place we went through. Yeah, went over the UK. Took the train.
Nice.
Went there, Nottingham.
Mhm.
Drove thick there because I was the only American.
Have some traditional British cask ales.
Yeah, beer was great. Fish and chips, not so good.
Oh, you gotta hit the right chip places. Yeah, you gotta.
I was very surprised.
There's good ones and bad ones. It's like
Yeah.
pizza in America or burgers in America.
That's a good
Right.
point. That's a good point.
There's
Yeah,
some great ones. You can't expect them all to be great.
right. It was a great time. Did that. Was broke for a while. Decided to stop.
Sounds like a great adventure.
It was a great adventure.
And what are you doing now?
Just working. Just working at a brewery. I'm actually trying to get out of the industry.
Yeah.
Yep. I joined Local 104. They're a sheet metal union,
Mm-hmm.
Bay Area. Just gonna, be an HVAC guy, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Do some trades work.
Cool.
Pays well.
Yep.
Right. Beer industry does not pay, and the music
No.
industry does
Nope.
not pay. I mean, both of them pay a very few
little.
people. Yeah.
They pay in different ways, but I'm just
Yes.
I'm at the point where I'm over it. I've been in it for what, almost a decade now. I think it's been like 8 years.
Mhm.
Time to become an adult, a responsible adult.
Yeah, I guess it's time to grow up. Kind of, not too much.
Yeah. Time for financial security anyway.
Yeah, that's more of the thing. Well, especially in I'm in San Francisco still,
Right.
and there's so many people that left the city.
Mm.
And I've noticed pretty big difference in, hospitality stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How many people you can pack in a bar. I mean, not to mention there's capacity laws now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you can't, pack a bunch of people in one place and make as much money anymore. I mean, I'm making like half of what I used to, like
Mm.
before the pandemic. It's just there's no money in it anymore. I mean, there always was no money in it, but now even more so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
It's
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
Now, are you still brewing on your Blickman equipment?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. When I came up with you, I shared some of that stout.
Right. It was good.
Yeah. Thanks. I got to get going again. I mean, I just recently moved. I mean, and recently I've been in this place for 6 months.
Mhm.
It takes a long time to kind of get settled. So, and I still got to figure out water and how to route everything. I don't know.
Right.
Not the time to do another brew.
Yeah. Are you gonna go up on the roof again and run a hose from the bathroom up to the roof? And
Right. No, that was a necessity in my other spot, but here I actually have a backyard, so
there you go.
yeah,
You're brewing in
upgrade.
the
I'll do it
backyard.
soon. I just need some time to do it.
So why not go back to the porn industry? The porn industry,
It's all dried up. It's all dried up, man.
Yeah.
With COVID, you never know.
Right.
Before, STDs weren't as big of a deal. You get used to it. The whole
Uh-huh.
COVID thing threw a wrench. In it.
Right. Right. Yeah. You can't cure COVID with antibiotics.
Nope.
Right. Right. You need horse medication, apparently.
Ketamine.
Dewormer.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have more Porno Steve and your questions right after this. All right, we're back. Chit chatting with our good friend Taylor Roach, who's living in San Francisco and sort of living the dream. Dream is paying half of what it paid before because of the pandemic.
Yeah, it's half a dream.
And he's living half a dream. Yeah, half a
Okay.
dream. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Put
So
on
we have
my-
some good Q&A questions.
Put on
folks.
my cheaters.
There we go.
And let's see. Dan asks, I'm hoping someone can help me out with this. I'm making water adjustments for a barley wine that I'm about to brew. I can't get the RA, residual alkalinity,
Right.
out there, into the recommended range for my SRM while keeping the mash pH low enough. I've listened to all the Water Ganza episodes and searched around on the internet, but have yet to come to a conclusion. Any help might save my head from bursting at this point.
Okay. Well, residual alkalinity is not the goal. It is a tool. So the goal for any beer style is mash pH, getting in that 5.2 to 5.6 mash pH range as measured on a sample cooled to room temperature. So what you're doing when with a barley wine or any other style is trying to gauge what the acidity of the specialty malts that you're adding to that beer are, to that grist, and where that mash pH is going to end up. And then you adjust your water accordingly. So American barley wine could be 15, 20 SRM. The guidelines for residual alkalinity versus beer color are just guidelines or suggestions. What you need to do is measure your mash pH and go from there. I think you never want to try to go too high with residual alkalinity. Even for imperial stouts, you don't want to go over 100 residual alkalinity. And for something like a barley wine, I would say, even though there's a lot of buffering capacity in that malt bill, I would think you wouldn't want to go over, say, 75 ppm as calcium carbonate for residual alkalinity. Generally, lower residual alkalinity is better. And so somewhere 25 to 75 RA for that style would probably be appropriate. But again, that's not the goal. The goal is your mash pH. So measure that mash pH and be sure.
There you go. Taylor, are you adjusting your water there? You've got a fairly soft water in San Francisco, right? Comes from
Yeah, I haven't even messed with water yet. I'm
Yeah.
not even there.
Right.
Honestly, I've focused more on the cold side of things.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and the beer you brought me, I didn't think it needed any water adjustments. Tasted great.
Yeah.
Most waters work,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
All right. Clayton is asking about storage temperature and aging. He says, I was talking to a worker at my local Total Wine and More store and asked why they don't refrigerate all their beer. He brought up cost of such a large refrigerator and further conversation, the topic of putting the same beer in and out of the fridge multiple times throughout the course of that beer's duration at the store, and the debate of will several drastic temperature changes adversely affect beer flavoring. Then listening to a Brew Strong show recently, and you brought up that wine requires minor fluctuations to help it age, but since beer doesn't need aging, it's bad for beer to fluctuate, especially several times from 40 degrees to 80 degrees and back. Was that lead up long enough? Let's see. I question, if you had to drink one of two shallow grave porters that had been in a store for 2 months, would you pick the one that stayed constant at 70-ish, or one that spent half the time in the fridge, but by way of 1 week in the fridge, 1 week out, 1 week in, 1 week out? Wouldn't the one that spent the most time at cooler temps still be less aged and oxidized, regardless of temperature fluctuation? What about the same question of twin or cousin, which is the hoppier beers that we have? Which example would have the best hop character remaining after 2 months? Sorry if I'm freaking you out about your poor 22-ounce babies after they leave your brewery. I'm sure they're all well kept. In fact, the only heretic beer I saw in the store was in the fridge. Thank you, Clayton. So the issue with the temperature swings a lot of times on I know it does have an impact on staling, and but one of the issues with a crown capped bottle is if you go extreme temperatures, I believe there's you get more oxygen ingressing through the liner and
in and out through.
They still breathe, right?
Slightly, you get diffusion across the membrane, I think. Whereas if it was canned, I don't think it's as much of a deal. I would say I don't think most stores put them in the fridge and then take them back out of the fridge. Once they go in the fridge, they stay in the fridge until they're sold.
It's a hypothetical.
Right. But which one would be better? I think in a can, let's say the top temperature was the same, right? Let's say he used 70 and they used 80, but let's say the top temperature is 80 and the store is 80, and for some reason they're taking it in and out. I probably would go with, if it's in a can, I would probably go with the one that spent more time cold. And even in the bottle, it still might be better, if you get 50% of the time cold versus the damage of the temperature swing. It depends, I guess the fridge would probably be at fridge temperatures. Maybe we're talking 37, 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's say the store at 80 would be pretty hot. I mean, most stores, I think if you're doing swings like, 100, Fahrenheit, 110 Fahrenheit down to, 28 Fahrenheit. You do that a few times, I think you might end up with some problems. But I'm not sure. I would go with the one that's just sat in the fridge the most.
Yeah, I would too. I think he brought up the question of wine, and I think that's I would think more from a barrel or a corked wine potentially
Mhm.
situation, which do not apply to beer bottles in the
Right.
market. Yeah, so in general, I'm not aware of a chemical reaction mechanism that would respond to, cold, refrigerator to room temp swings. I can't think of something that would trigger as a result of that change. So I think it comes back to simply less time at higher temperatures is better
Mhm.
for shelf stability and oxidation and aging, or staling, I mean.
Yeah, I think part of it is, on the bottles, the crown caps, you go back to that. Whereas
Yeah.
the cans, you get that seal.
Total seal. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's an interesting question, Clayton. And so, perhaps
If you had yeast in the bottle,
yes,
that could be another aspect, another factor to be considered.
right. And pretty much every craft beer out there has yeast in it.
Yeah.
Unless they're sterile filtering and stripping out all the yeast, there's always some yeast in every beer. It's minor, but there is always some.
So it could still produce, yeah, if there was still yeast in there, it could still produce compounds because it's being stressed out by the fluctuation in temperatures, right?
You could end up with more yeast autolysis perhaps, and
Mhm.
maybe get some additional off flavors due to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
Okay. Let's see here. Vernon writes, do you know if iodophor loses its potency with time? I have noticed that after 15 to 20 minutes of sanitizing my equipment, the water iodophor soup changes from light amber color to clear. Is the iodophor losing its potency, or is the color nothing to worry about? Thanks for all of the help that you guys provide.
Okay, quiz, Taylor.
I don't think it does.
Wrong.
Huh.
Yeah, if the iodophor loses color, it's lost potency.
Really?
Yeah, and now why his solution is losing color after half an hour, I don't know. In the case,
it's being used up.
yeah, I mean,
Perhaps
if
he
you
has a lot of organic load in, so he's not. It's important that you clean your equipment first and make sure you've removed all the protein, other organic materials off of that equipment before you sanitize. If your sanitizer, especially iodophor, is going clear on you that quickly, there's an issue, or maybe you're in a hot environment. The active ingredient in iodophor is what gives it the color. And if it goes clear, you have an issue. If you're using something like Star San or whatever it is, one of the others, that's clear, it's more pH based. But the iodophor, the color, the interesting thing about iodophor is it will lose its efficacy even sitting in the bottle for long enough. And I've seen where the bottle sitting, room temperature for a year or two, the actual iodophor will come out of like those 5-star containers. It'll come out of it and stain the wall it's sitting next to.
oh wow.
So it's that volatile. It can work its way out of the container.
Wow.
I've got a stained wall. I can show you. So yeah, it's quite an ingredient. It's very effective, and but yeah, you need to have a bit of color.
Yeah. Do you have any
All right.
stained walls, Taylor?
You have any wall stains?
Yeah, not in this room.
Is that called a misshoot in the porn industry, or what's that called?
Yeah, it's a retake, redo.
Retake. Well, you know who knows a lot about stained walls? I mean, Iota 4 and other sanitizers is our good friends at Brew Chatter.
Ah, yes.
Josh and RJ. They run a great shop up there. They have all sorts of creative things going on. Actually, one of the things that we're doing tomorrow at Heretic is a brew with Brew Chatter, and we are going to use the Hornindal yeast
Oh,
and
cool.
mosaic hops, and because of that, we're going to call it Mo Horny. So I'm excited to brew that with them, and then we're going to put it in cans. We're going to have that out available up there and out of their shop in Sparks, Nevada, Reno, and then
Very
we'll have it
fun.
available at Heretic too. Yeah, it's gonna be a
Oh, be sure
fun
to say
deal.
hi for me when they come down.
Yeah. And then I'll be up there, I think it's October 16th for the release of the beer. We're gonna have a little party, and they're gonna also have people homebrew it there at the shop. So we're
Very
gonna be
fun.
homebrewing the Mo Horny at the shop. Huh? A lot of fun. It's gonna
Very
be
nice.
kind of like a Viking IPA. So all excited about that. Yeah, those good folks at Brew Chatter, they help sponsor the show. They'll pay for it, and good folks. If you need a homebrew stuff and you want to see them, go check it out. Good folks. All right, we're gonna take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this. All right, we're back. We're talking with our good friend Taylor Roach, who worked on the show for years, I want to say.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
3 years.
3
Three and a
years.
half, 4.
And became a beloved part of the show, also known as Porno Steve. If you haven't heard those episodes, you should go back. Some of our finest work, I think,
Truly.
was in the Porno Steve era. Absolutely.
Yeah. What do we got there next?
Let's see here. Kyle also has a question about aging beer. He says, hello there. I was just wondering if you had ever covered the topic of storing beer, or if you plan to address this in the future. Thanks, Kyle. Hollister. I think we have talked about
Yeah.
aging beer, barrel aging. I think we covered every kind of aging, perhaps. And it's interesting. One of the things I think about aging beer is a friend of mine, Dave Teckham, he had stored under his house, the cool of the crawl space under his house, bottles of, it was, famous British brewery, made a
Fuller's.
barley wine,
Oh,
and then stopped in like
mhm.
the late 90s. I'm getting old. Anyways, he pulled out like a vertical tasting and of 20 years or whatever, which is really thrilled to be a part of. And it's interesting, no matter how you store beer, I think, a lot of it depends on the beer going into it, whether it's going to be appropriate to age. Not every beer ages well. And even styles that should age well, if they're not brewed right, won't age well.
Yeah.
But interesting things, if there's Brett or bacteria or other things, I think a lot of how the beer was produced really, and how good a beer it is, really affects the storage and the quality of storage. Storage is kind of an addition additional, flavor and character, but can be, a little rough if the original beer is not so good.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of oxidation compounds, esterification of higher alcohols that can occur, creation of different aromas and flavors. But yeah, so I think it helps if it's a darker beer where you can, understand this raisin and plum character that develops as being complementary to the overall character of the beer. A raisin plum character in a pale beer would be odd, whereas in a dark beer, it's kind of complementary.
Well, you may not even get those compounds in a
Yeah.
pale beer, so it depends a lot on the beer. I'd say, kind of go back in the archives and find that episode. I think we covered it
Yeah.
pretty much in depth, but it's, the things to concern yourself with are temperature, and swings in temperature, oxygen,
Yeah.
and obviously light if you're using, a bottle, even a brown bottle. Be careful. Light can do terrible things as well.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Question about Jamel's all grain blonde ale recipe. Tom writes, "Hi there, brewed Sunday. The all grain recipe for Jamel's famous blonde. I had some distractions on brew day and I didn't realize the recipe calls for a 90-minute boil and the first hop addition at 60 minutes. Well, I only boiled for 60 minutes and added the first hop addition at the beginning. So utilization should be the same, but what about the shorter boil time? Will this have much effect on the final beer? If so, what? Thanks in advance, Tom." So at first I thought he was talking about American Blonde, which,
Okay.
and I'm assuming this is Brewing Classic Styles he's talking about, and maybe not my Brew Your Own articles.
Oh,
But then I realized, he's probably talking about the Belgian Blonde.
right. Okay.
And that uses Pilsner malt in the all grain version. If you're using Pilsner malt, that's why it suggests a 90-minute boil to drive off, to convert the SMM and drive it off in the boil, so you don't end up with DMS, which is kind of a corn, canned corn kind of character.
Yeah.
So that would be what I would expect. You might end up with a bit of DMS in the finished beer if you only did 60 minutes.
Yeah. In American blonde, not too big a deal, but in a Belgian blonde, it would be definite off flavor.
And the thing is, it's really based off of the color of the malt you're using. So a really pale, super pale malt, 2-row, even though it's not called Pilsner, could, have DMS issues.
Yeah.
A Pilsner malt that's kilned a little darker, let's say 2 Lovibond and above, probably doesn't have a whole lot of DMS issues. It's the really pale stuff that does.
Yeah.
The paler the malt, the less kilning it's had, that's why you might extend your boil.
Yeah. The you see some stout malts marketed these days, which are a very pale malt, and those would have the same issue. Less SMM, denatured during kilning, and more boiling time would be needed to drive it off from the beer.
Now, Taylor, have you tried brewing anything with like a light Pilsner malt? Any lighter colored beers?
Nothing with a Pilsner malt. I think I did a hazy IPA, like when was this? December of 2019? Yeah, December 2019. So a couple years ago. I forget what we used for malt. I think we used something from
Like
from
the
Almanac
raw two-row or something.
or Admiral Maltings. Yeah, I think it was just
Oh.
two.
Admiral. Mhm.
Right. So yeah, probably no issues there.
Yeah, no.
I think
I think we just did a standard 60-minute.
60-minute.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, there's a number of values to the boil time.
Mhm.
Curtis and Tara, right? John, Jamel, and Justin. Who's Justin?
I don't know.
Remember anybody called Justin? Oh, no, now I remember Justin. Thanks so much for the very informative show. I've been going back through the podcast and have been learning so much. I have two questions I'm hoping you can help me out with. Number one, I just got listening to the cleaning show and I wondered if it's necessary to clean your boil kettle and all fittings and the immersion chiller with PBW after every brew session. I always scrub my boil kettle after each use, but I have never cleaned my immersion chiller. I put my immersion chiller in the boil kettle about 15 minutes before the end of the boil and circulate it through a Jamel type recirculation system using a March pump. Now, think about it. I have never cleaned the pump either. I have always figured that 15 minutes at boiling temperature sanitized everything. But after listening about the importance of cleaning, even over sanitizing, I'm wondering if I could be susceptible to infection from bacteria or something hiding under the bits of crud on my immersion chiller or inside the pump. Based on what I heard, I should soak everything in PBW and run it through the pump after every brew session. Please let me know what you believe to be best practice. Well, I mean, one of the best practice is to clean all your equipment, including the chiller. The immersion chiller, because of the acidity of the wort, it tends to be fairly bright and shiny. But where it transitions from the top of the wort to the pieces coming up to connect to your water and all that, it tends to build up some crud there. So at the very least, you should be scrubbing and cleaning that part. And
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt to give it a clean every once in a while. He's right that, at boiling temperatures for 15 minutes, you're really not going to have much of an infection problem.
Right.
But that crud that builds up inside the pump, on the immersion chiller, in the kettle, it does have other negative effects in that it can, slow the speed of your pump. It can impact the effectiveness of the immersion chiller on chilling because you're building up material on there that kind of insulates it. They're fairly minor effects, but keep your equipment in good shape, keep it clean, and it'll serve you better. It'll function like it does from the beginning. If you don't, keep it clean, you'll eventually have problems. But I don't think you need to do a massive clean of the immersion chiller every brew. I mean, I would just make sure it all looks good. If it's building up, black crud on it or something, take a scrubby to it. And
I would think there'd be more of a problem with the pump itself rather than the immersion chiller. Because immersion chiller, I mean, you can obviously see everything. It's pretty out in the open.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think there wouldn't be necessarily, especially for 15 minutes of the boil and it's all coming through. I mean, if it's at like a full boil, and you're gonna kill anything comes in contact with. But you just
Yeah.
don't want any other crud coming out or your pump being blocked. That's what I could
Mhm.
kind of think about.
Yeah.
You do have a bunch of crud building up, even if it's not alive or living organic at all. I mean, you're still got buildup down there.
Right.
That's just never good anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and you can take apart the head of the March pump.
Yeah.
I would take that apart every, at least once a brewing season.
Yeah.
And check the impeller, see if it's getting worn, see if bits are breaking off or it's become really stiff and not effective anymore. And you can replace that part. You know, I think that that's
Yeah.
good maintenance as well.
Yeah, I'll bring up the corrosion aspects of cleaning immersion chillers. Um, if you have wort left on the immersion chiller that you don't get completely hosed off, that can mold, you know, and
Sure.
once it molds, you start getting deeper corrosion of the copper.
It'll eat into the metal.
Yeah, and you can end up some permanent stains. You can end, which will be hard to clean next time because they'll be slightly pitted, you know, microscopically. It just makes the whole thing harder and harder to clean and know that you're not contributing excess, you know, copper oxide into the wort and other sort of issues with corrosion. So yeah, make sure you get that immersion chiller thoroughly rinsed off, wiped down after brewing with it. Because yeah, I mean, I've thought that I've cleaned everything well, and then, you know, a week later I have to pass by in the garage and look at it. It's like it's got some black spots. So yeah, just watch out for that. Pumps, of course, if you allow mold to build up in them, you don't clean them. You know, at some point you may decide to use a counterflow or something like that, and next thing you know, you've pumped mold into your brew. So yeah,
Right.
as he says, make sure you keep your pumps clean.
Yeah, and you know, don't have to, you know, get nuts about it, but
Right.
you know, it's good practice to maintain your equipment. His second question, which is in violation of the rules of question asking, you're supposed to one question per email, but he did number them nicely,
That's
1
good.
and 2,
Yeah.
which is helpful.
Gives us the option.
Yes, I have been using a 70-quart Extreme Coleman cooler as a mash tun for many years. Let's see. I'm now wondering if the inside of the cooler is food grade. I know the 10-gallon round coolers that beer supply stores are made for water, but what about rectangular coolers like mine? I'm especially concerned because I'm holding 152-degree water in the cooler for 90 minutes or so. I do 12-gallon batches, so the cooler is usually full to the top. I have the option to use a stainless steel pot as a mash tun, but I have my batch sparging system dialed in very well. My wife is very concerned about the safety of leaching plastics in our drinking containers. I was thinking of switching it to better bottles for fermenting, and she raised concern about that. And then I thought about the cooler issue I'm asking about. I tried to search the Coleman website for any food grade info, but couldn't find anything. Please let me know if this cooler presents a possibility of leaching nasty stuff into my wort. You know, the thing about plastics, even the food grade plastics, you will be leaching plastic materials into your wort. They're considered food grade because the materials that leach out of it are considered not harmful to humans in the quantities that you would get them. And I would say that that is designed at a certain temperature range. So those coolers, some of them are meant to only hold cold liquids, which leaches less. Some of them are designed for cold or hot liquids, you know, like coffee or something like that. So it is leaching something, but the thing is, if you've been using it for many years, you've probably already taken all the stuff out of it that's going to come out of it. The
Yeah.
plasticizers, the stuff that keeps it flexible and all that, that's what comes out of it. That's why they become brittle over time, because that stuff leaches out of it. And so, you know, personally, the alcohol in it is probably worse for you than the plasticizers that are coming out of it.
Yeah.
Alcohol's toxic. So if it were me, I really wouldn't worry about it. Depends how old you are. I mean, I'm going to die of other stuff. So the amount of plastic I could get out of a cooler, I could probably eat a cooler liner, and you know, that's not going to do me in.
Right.
But you know, it's all, you know, up to your own choice. And but definitely it's extracting.
Yeah. The minor amounts over time, I think, are pretty benign.
Well, and a lot of it will be taken up by the yeast, I would
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
And the yeast will take it out. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it either. As you say, the alcohol is
right.
much more, much higher concentrations and so on.
Yes. Well, and in the mash, some will get that plasticizer stuff. I'm sure it gets stuck to the grain and get left behind. You
Yeah.
draw out the liquid, then you boil it. I'm sure that coagulates some of it, or does something to it as well. And then the yeast, and the trube, and then the yeast. There's a lot of opportunity for it to be removed. I'd be curious to see a study of what exactly it is and how much gets makes it through the entire process. But my guess is it would probably be pretty low, and especially if you've been using it for many years, I wouldn't worry about it. And I wouldn't worry about the better bottles either. They're polycarbonate, right? They're
Mhm.
not a
Polyethylene.
yeah, right. So I think that they're they make polycarbonate utensils and stuff,
Yeah.
so that you put in your mouth. And so I wouldn't worry about that, especially at the temperatures, fermenting temperatures. I think those are a good product. Yeah, I think I would just go for it, and don't drink too much alcohol because that's
Yeah.
toxic for you.
Avoid those hot dog eating contests because the nitrates will get you, but I wouldn't worry about the BPA.
Right. There you go. All right. Let's take one more short break. We'll be back right after this. All right, we're back. We're talking with a good friend, Porno Steve. He's decided to leave the porn industry and go into sheet metal work. Sheet
It was
metal
about
union.
time,
Yeah.
I bet some of those guys are gonna recognize me, so I don't know.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Can only run so far.
You'll be laying duct. Is that what's going to happen?
Hanging duck.
I was
Hanging
wondering,
duck?
is sheet metal a new music genre or
Oh yeah, right.
Probably.
You can play some sheet metal.
Yeah. That sounds like a classical metal. Sheet
Mhm.
metal.
All right. James writes, guys, see the following topic from the forum. This might be a good update to the water shows, as most homebrewers that I know use Ward Labs and probably don't know about this item that AJ DeLang is discussing. Here in quotes, perhaps everyone except me already knows this, but I just discovered yesterday that Ward Labs reports list sulfate as sulfur, i.e. the milligrams per liter number means the milligrams of sulfur in the sulfate, not the mass of sulfate ions themselves. The popular spreadsheets calculate sulfate as sulfate, which makes more sense to me. Before entering your reported sulfate number into one of these spreadsheets, convert as sulfur to as sulfate by multiplying by 3.
Yep, I knew that.
Did you tell everybody?
Yeah, it's
Did you bring enough for everyone?
I believe it's on page. Well, it's in chapter 22. Yeah.
There you go. It's in chapter 22 of the water book or how to brew.
How to brew. It may be in the water book as well, because I do know that has come up before. Yep.
There you go.
I can look it up. But.
And now everybody knows on the show.
Yeah, multiply by 3 if it's as sulfur.
There you go. All right. One last question. Miles asks, hey guys, first off, love your shows. Listen every day, literally a show a day when I walk my dog. I'm running out, so you need to come out with more. Some questions about hop utilization. I was wondering if there was a difference in how hops are utilized depending on whether someone uses a wort chiller or an ice bath. I'm thinking that even if hops are thrown in at flame out, you could still be extracting bitterness for a while if you're using an ice bath, since it does not cool for a while. Does that make sense? If so, how could I adjust my recipes when I use an ice bath? I'm not even sure if my question makes sense, but I hope it does. And if it's been answered, please just point me in the right direction. Thanks, Miles. Yeah, absolutely. it's one of the things I've always said is when we did the Can You Brew It shows, the questions I asked the pro brewers were not so much, the size of things. That was just to get, the ratio of, grains and hops and all that. And it was the time. People were always thinking that, in a pro brew setup, they get more utilization of hops and they get more bittering. That's why when they give me their recipe, it's, I need to add more hops because I don't get that. And what it was is, they'd have their boil time and maybe the boil time was different, but then they have the transfer to the whirlpool, which, pumping it over takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That's at boiling temperatures.
Yeah.
And that's extracting more bitterness. And then the whirlpool stand, that's extracting more bitterness. So I always needed to know the full time between, for their boil, for their transfer, for their knockout. And I asked those questions because that time made a difference. Now, in the ice bath scenario, it cools from, the outside very slowly into the center. So it's difficult to give you an exact number. But, if you're whirlpooling it and use a whirlpool chiller, and once you get below about 175 degrees Fahrenheit, you can assume isomerization stops. So with the ice bath, what would you say, John? I don't know how to calculate it.
Yeah, I mean, the reaction kinetics for isomerization, according to a model that was published by Shellhammer and Malowicki, it can go down as low as 150 degrees or even 140, I think. But after 175, it's an exponential curve, or so it really nosedives in terms of the amount of isomerization. It's like less than 5% of what you would get if it were actually boiling for the same amount of time. So yeah, very small amount. So once you get below 175, it really falls off.
Right.
And
keep
but
in mind,
it's a time for time thing. So think of it in maybe in terms of 50% of what you get for that same amount of boiling time, 30%, 20% as you decrease temperature.
Right. And just keep in mind that, boiling temperature is essentially, extracting like actual boiling does. The action of boiling, the turbulence in there helps spread everything throughout the liquid and makes, the extraction of the compounds easier. But you've already done that. It's all throughout the liquid already. And so, at hot temperatures is just like boiling. Add that to your time when you're calculating and you're using a calculator. If you're sitting 20 minutes, running it through a plate chiller, or 30 minutes, those 30 minutes, that liquid is, isomerizing more alpha acids and more bitter. So use that in your calculation. All right. Well, thank you, Taylor, Porno Steve, for joining us. And thank you to our fine sponsors, Blickman Engineering and Brew Chatter. Make sure to reach out to those folks and support them. And if you're listening live, stay tuned. We're going to have another show. Taylor, you going to join us for that one, or you going to run? Or
I think I got time.
You just got time. All right. Let's do this. We'll end this show here, and then, like I said, if you're listening live, stay tuned. You can ask your questions in the comments section of the video. Click on the comments, and then Mr. John Palmer is watching those. Will the one question was, will the Mo Horny be available in the Cleveland area? If we end up brewing a larger batch of it later, yes, we'll get it out to distribution. But the first batch is just gonna be 5 barrels, and we'll suck that all down in the tap room and at Brew Chatter. But we like the concept so much, we may go ahead and do a larger batch of it and get it out there into the market. All right. Until then, everybody, brew strong.
Brew strong, everyone.